Donald Trump has baited Mark Carney into another trap. He's getting more concessions forced on him from this trade war. Mark Carney's left with nothing other than continuing to go down to Mexico and beg for forgiveness. At the same time, he is spending billions of taxpayer dollars. Funny enough, all of these projects were forced by Trump. This is at the same time that Canadians are losing jobs, private debt is growing, and people are declaring bankruptcy at alarming rates. Trump's already moved on to India and Russia. It's starting to feel like Trump is letting Canada rot in the corner until he comes back and makes Canada the 51st state. Although he is closing a major employment loophole that will be hurting India. It's a loophole that they used against Canada as well. But don't worry, we still have enough of their entrepreneurs here and they will save us from ourselves. And speaking of jobs and entrepreneurs, the media is running cover on how bad the job situation is and how it was caused by Operation Curry Bomb in Canada. And while they're ramping up all of this rhetoric, the anti-Trump, anti-American rhetoric is going off the charts. Almost every mainstream news channel is putting out anti-Trump, anti-America pieces right now. There's a lot to talk about in today's video, so let's get into it. Carney is patching up ties with Mexico in face of Trump threats. Carney is still planning on going down to Mexico to try and get a bilateral trade agreement going, even though Mexico has said, we're not really that interested. At the same time, why would Mexico risk this when they are on a 90-day grace period to organize a deal with and negotiate a deal with America? That you think they're going to set up a bilateral trade agreement with Canada? Why would they risk putting a deal together with Canada, especially since this is an apology tour? This move represents an attempt to patch over differences that arose during the final months of the previous Canadian administration, aka Justin Trudeau. When provincial leaders mused about sidelining Mexico in trade talks with the US, Carney's predecessor refused to rule it out. Okay, so now Canada is negotiating off the back foot with the US, and they're going down to Mexico to beg for forgiveness after Canada threw them under the bus. Yeah, that's going to work out real well for them. But then we had a new major concession that's being pushed by US Congress. Major threat to trade. US Congress Republicans call for Canada to rescind the Online Streaming Act. The letter sheds a light on how growing numbers of influential US politicians are using ongoing trade negotiations to push back against digital policies. So again, they are using this trade negotiation to make Canada change their laws. This is huge because almost every Canadian had a problem with the Online Streaming Act, and what it's taken to get this resolved, potentially, it hasn't changed yet, is pressure from the Trump administration. Yet another concession, another move that Canadians wanted that Trump is getting done. It's crazy how the pressure from the Trump administration is fixing Canada on a bunch of the things that we wanted changed here. Republicans on an influential House committee are pushing top Trump administration officials to pressure Canada to kibosh its controversial Online Streaming Act, which they describe as a major threat to the trade relationship. The fact that the Online Streaming Act already imposes discriminatory obligations and threatens additional obligations imminently is a major threat to our cross-border digital trade relationship. As bilateral trade negotiations continue, we urgently request that you engage with your Canadian counterparts to share our concerns and rescind the Online Streaming Act. So they want this changed, Canadians want it changed, but what has Mark Carney made as his next new major announcement while we're in this trade war? Canada announced $2 billion investment in military salaries. Canada will boost the salaries of its soldiers in order to recruit new and retain current members. The federal government said these changes are needed to reflect current global challenges. The new pay increases are part of the $9.3 billion in new military investment Prime Minister Mark Carney announced on June 9th to bring Canada's defense spending within reach of the 2% NATO target by the end of this fiscal year. Can anybody else think of another world leader who put pressure on Mark Carney to increase this defense spending? Oh yeah, once again, it was Donald Trump. Canada had not hit the NATO target. Trump was not happy. And the only reason investment, literally, I'm not joking, the only reason investment is being made into the Canadian military is because of pressures from the Trump administration. It's really funny that that's the case because elbows up just keeps turning into somehow wins for Canada, but not in the way that the Liberals said it was going to be. But we did have this other announcement recently. Carney vows $1.2 billion bailout for lumber sector hit by Trump's tariffs. One, they are using this again as a Trump excuse of how they are deploying capital into Canada's economy. Canada's economy, which we're going to get into, is not doing well. The lumber industry, before the Trump's tariffs, I'm going to continue to say this, before the Trump's tariffs was already starting a move down into the U.S. Major lumber companies were moving to America. This is being used as a bailout to keep these companies happy. It's all taxpayer dollars to keep this industry afloat. Look, I want to protect Canadian jobs as much as the next guy, but if the only way we can protect it is constant government spending and bailouts in that industry, that's not good. It's going to continue to build up sovereign debt, and Canada is already going to have an insane deficit this year. And speaking of debt, Canadian insolvencies rise to 2010 levels as bankruptcies soar. Canadian consumers have become world-renowned for their ability to juggle astronomical amounts of debt. Those days are coming to an end as insolvencies ripped higher in June, according to the Office of the Superintendent of Bankruptcy. It was the highest volume for the month since 2010, but the quantity isn't the only issue. It's the type of debt intervention that is becoming more serious. And the reason why this is a big deal is because people always wondered, okay, the jobs keep falling, our economy's not producing anything. How are people in Canada affording all of these things, especially as companies keep moving down to the US and all of this foreign investment that was supposed to come into Canada has been halted. It's not coming anymore. Like, how are we staying afloat? One has been government spending, and we'll get into that shortly. And two, it got so normalized in Canada to live beyond your means and load up on debt. So now the government deficits are exploding in Canada. Bankruptcies continue to skyrocket on the personal side. And Mark Carney has been prime minister since March. And since then, there has not been one new major project announced of foreign money coming into Canada to build in Canada, which continues to make it feel like Trump is still planning on Canada becoming the 51st state. And we actually do have a meeting between Trump and one of his top advisors. Here's a screenshot of a meeting between Donald Trump and his son Barron, and it says, "Your plan to annex Canada is working." This comes off the news of Canada's negative job print, but don't worry, Operation Curry Bomb is in full force and India is taking advantage. India's Modi invites Russia's Putin to visit among U.S. tensions. I actually think this was a bad diplomatic move. Even though Trump is wanting to meet with Putin right now to try and get the ceasefire going in Ukraine, I think this was horrible optics. Before you guys say in the comments, but they're both BRICS nations. BRICS isn't real. They never meet. They're not doing any deals. They don't even know what currency they're going to use. Whatever. I don't care about BRICS. That being said, if you're trying to get a deal done with the United States and they just increase your tariffs to 50%, I don't think these are the optics I would want. This is a major loophole that is being cracked down on in the United States, and Canada had this exact problem as well. The Trump admin is making a change to the H-1B program starting September 2nd, forcing all renewals to do mandatory interviews. This makes the entire process fantastically slower. In Canada, we have what's called the LMIA process, the temporary foreign worker process. It's very similar to this H-1B program. In India, use both these programs to subsidize themselves by sending millions of Indians to North America to remit all their money back home. And it, again, has been bad for the U.S. economy. It's been horrible for the Canadian economy. And now they're requiring that you have to do actual in-person interviews because they said it got taken advantage of during the pandemic and other things. Same thing as Canada. It's very, very similar. And they made everything online and all you had to do was submit, and it was quick little paperwork. And we ended up with a lot of foreign entrepreneurs. But the good news is they are starting awesome, profitable businesses. Here's a new business in Canada that's starting. We now have the Indian tuk-tuks hitting the Canadian streets, which is exactly what we wanted. But don't worry, buddy. It's only $5. Only $5, buddy. Get in tuk-tuk. I'll give you a good time. Best drive, buddy. No problem. And that's exactly what I wanted to see in Canada. You know, just streets full of Indians who came over, most likely semi-illegally. They did technically do it legally. It was as close as you could get to the line of it being illicit. And of course, with us bringing over millions, it was destroying the job market, which we got addicted to immigration. We're going to get into all of the anti-American, anti-Trump rhetoric in a second, but just to show how the media is running cover for this, we have major contractions happening right now. To understand how disastrous Canada's July jobs are, you need to understand how these numbers look. The public sector is growing. Mark Carney's deficit spending is out of control, and everything that pays for all of that above, like entrepreneurship and the private sector, is collapsing. I don't think the tuk-tuk's really going to be helping that much, but the private sector jobs are plummeting. Self-employed jobs are plummeting. Oh, but look, in our recessionary trend, we still do have public sector growth. And now, getting into the media propaganda of them running cover for the jobs before they show us the anti-American, anti-Trump videos. Have you liked the video yet? We're trying to get these videos out in front of more people. We're trying to grow the channel. If you like what we talk about here, feel free to subscribe. Love to have you on board. Let's get back to it. This is the kind of stuff that they're saying why the youth can't get jobs.
This report that was put together by a number of community groups surveying young people right across the city of Toronto is that if you believe young people don't want to work and don't want a job, you should be disavowed of that notion. Over 60% of respondents said a job would help them reduce their dependence on their parents, for example. But the other key findings in this report show some of the challenges that young people face. 75%.
Oh, what are some of these challenges? Could have anything to do with mass immigration in the millions, destroying the jobs? Let's see.
Percent of young people said, you know, a job must align with their values, their sense of purpose. But things like a lack of transportation, inaccessible job locations, competing responsibilities like trying to go to school or being a caregiver, that's 74% of you said that that was a problem.
That's insane. That's insane. The fact that we have more public transit than we've ever had in the history of Canada, but now transportation's a problem. Now it's a problem that they're a caregiver at home for their parents. That's the issue. It has to align with their values. They don't want to go work at a store in the mall because it has to align with their values. No. And finally, we had somebody almost admit the real problem. He used disgusting language, in my personal opinion, to cover up the problem. Let's get into it.
Well, the big story for Canada's economy today is a disappointing jobs picture. In July, more than 40,000 jobs were lost. And in particular, we're seeing increased signs of challenges for younger Canadians who are trying to get into the jobs market. Travis O'Rourke is the president at Hayes and joins us to talk a little bit more about the trends that he's seeing. It's always good to get your analysis, Travis.
Are the trends going to be that it doesn't align with their personal values?
A lot of economists about the data points, but what is the challenge here for young Canadians who just want to get a job right now?
It's a few different stories, and you mentioned earlier about that youth group is kind of that 15 to 24. I'll kind of break it into two.
Okay.
So if you look at the
that's the other thing that's worth noting. Youth unemployment goes all the way up to 24, and people always think it's like 16-year-old high school kids who just can't get a job at McDonald's. All the way up to 24. 15
to let's say 20. The students that are still at school, some of them are returning. They're really struggling right now because whether it's a retail store or some of the seasonal work, those companies are trying to hold back money and stop spending. The second thing you've got that group is dealing with is there was a huge influx in obviously new Canadians over the last 12, 24 months, and everyone is battling for a paycheck. So if you've got students who are only going to be here for a short window of time, and you've got newer Canadians that can work any shift over 4 or 5 months, maybe even into the winter, a lot of people are...
Travis, you're an idiot. The fact that you are using language of new Canadians for basically scammers who did an 8-month program from a diploma mill that they were sold into from recruiting agencies in India, and now they're new Canadians, so they come over, they do an 8-month program at some random community college in some random junk program, and they are new Canadians, so they scam their way into Canada, basically bend every rule, same with the temporary foreign workers and all of these other things, and they're new Canadians, so you're just going to water down and devalue the total total national identity of being Canadian to anybody who graduates an 8-month stupid diploma program from a community college is now instantly a new Canadian at the expense of local Canadians, actual Canadians, real Canadians who can't get a job, and the youth unemployment continues to skyrocket because idiots like you are using language like this as propaganda to say those people are new Canadians. And until you and all of the people like you are willing to use real language and call out problems, it's going to continue to get way worse in Canada. But you guys love your propaganda, and that's why we're going to get into all of these propaganda articles, all of this fake news that's coming out that's anti-American, anti-Trump, and there are so many of these talking heads out there in Canada who are just making every problem so much worse. Like the title of this article, for example, Donald Trump's tariffs on Canada are making his party anxious ahead of 2026 midterms. I read this entire article. Do you know how they spun this title? This title was spun based on the fact that people are saying, we're not sure where the tariffs are going to go. Canada's not even mentioned. They're talking about Trump's plans with tariffs. Canada, as a specific reason why this party would be nervous heading into midterms, is not mentioned. But this article chose to try and undermine Trump, try and get Americans, Canadians, everybody riled. Oh yeah, you know what? These people actually are concerned about these Trump's tariffs on Canada. No, they're not. You know what? Americans, weigh in down below. How many people do you have in your circle who have been saying, you know what? Actually, I'm really concerned about the tariffs that Trump has on Canada. I want to know how many politicians are on TV saying, I'm concerned about the tariffs that Trump's putting on Canada, because I'm not seeing any of it. But coincidentally, these guys are, even though it's not even in their own article. Then we also get stupid videos like this, where again, they try to make Trump look bad while Canada's doing the same thing, and they run cover for them.
President Donald Trump's new global trading order has brought American tariffs to their highest level since the Great Depression.
The tariffs went up. I think we're going to be heading towards $50 billion a month in tariff revenue that no one's talked about except for the president.
For all the enthusiasm, the White House is reluctant to admit where the revenue will come from. It's not foreign countries, as Trump has claimed.
The check is written by the importer right at the dock.
Yeah, and then the importer can pass it on or not.
Pass it on to American consumers. Companies like Walmart
or not.
Volvo and Adidas have warned of higher prices on everything from clothes to cars to groceries. Estimates are it will cost the average American family $2,400 per year, thanks to a president who promised to lower costs, but instead keeps announcing new duties.
So, they just said thanks to a president who promised to lower costs. Well, guess what? The Canadian Prime Minister, Marxist conman himself, also ran on lowering costs for Canadians. Guess what he's also doing? He's putting counter tariffs on the US. Guess what you're not mentioning in this video? How Mark Carney, in theory, is guilty of every single thing you're accusing Trump of, and it's going to be bad for Canadians. But no, only Trump is the president who's increased cost of living. What else can we blame Trump for in Canada? What else can we blame Trump for in Canada? Let's check it out.
It doesn't even feel safe to be there right now. So much is changing so rapidly, constantly, and that's the thing that's scaring me.
That's Angel Jenkel. They were scheduled to be deported from Canada back to the US last month, but a federal judge temporarily halted the deportation order. Jenkel is non-binary and lives with their Canadian fiancé who has epilepsy and requires regular care due to his frequent seizures.
Well, that's exactly what Canada needed. We needed foreign investment, and then we also needed foreign people into Canada who are confused if they're a man or a woman. Yeah, that's really going to help build Canada. Oh, this made it into the Canadian courts and cost tens of thousands of taxpayer dollars? Oh, that's good.
Home in the US, President Donald Trump has been rapidly scaling back the rights of trans and non-binary people since the moment he took office.
It will henceforth be the official policy of the United States government that there are only two genders, male and female.
I know that people don't have as many protections for their jobs because they've basically completely eradicated the language for trans people from everything in the system. It's not safe for everybody.
The judge who halted the deportation, Julie Blackhawk.
Okay, let's take a look at Julie Blackhawk there. Okay, there's the judge. This is the judge who halted the deportation. That's Julie Blackhawk. She is a judge. She's getting paid hundreds of thousands of taxpayer dollars to be a public judge in Canada. Julie Blackhawks. She's got her nice little medal on there, and she is adamant that these are our transgender refugees who Canada needs to take in. Why? Because you can no longer sign an X on your passport there. You can only put male or female. Huh, okay, that's worth them coming to Canada. That's certainly not a bunch of propaganda being run by, keep in mind, this is Canada's state-sponsored news organization that gets paid hundreds of millions to billions of taxpayer dollars. But don't worry, the anti-American, anti-Trump rhetoric didn't stop there. We have this video, which I think's way funnier at the very least.
When was your last trip to the United States?
It would have been last year summer.
Trips to the United States used to be common for Kelly Bergquist, but the ongoing trade war made her reconsider.
I just don't really want to support them right now. If they're going to do that to us, I don't want to give any money to them.
If you asked me to draw a picture of somebody who was like elbows up, liberal boomer in Canada, who is voting for the worst things, I'd probably be drawing something similar.
Now she's planning a big trip next year to the Balkan countries in southeastern Europe.
I could have easily done a Mississippi River cruise. As of right now, I'm just putting all that aside until we kind of see where things are going.
Data shared by Flight Centre Canada shows Canadians are choosing other international destinations. From May to July, Buenos Aires, Osaka, Copenhagen, and Curacao saw a more than 100% increase in travel spending by Canadians compared to last year. Aruba and Lisbon have also seen a more than 60% increase.
I also do. Well, first of all, Japan's like the #1 travel destination in the world, so it's not like that insane. It's became a major trend of just people are going to Japan. But I'd be curious, like, you know, the Curacao and the Buenos Aires, like, is that people going home?
Many things can influence the change, but this manager says tensions with the U.S. are top of mind for clients.
People are still traveling at the same rate they were. They're just choosing different destinations. So that tourism money that would have been going there is 100%. It's going to other places.
This resort chain in Mexico says about 15,000 more Canadians booked this year compared to 2024. The Canadian-owned company is doubling down.
Canadian owned for one. Also, they talked about if any of these people are choosing to travel to Canada to keep their money inside of Canada, potentially help Canadian businesses. No, they're going to go down to Mexico.
We have digital campaigns in 20 different cities in Canada at the moment.
So how coveted are Canadian travelers right now?
It's a market that we love, that we care for, that we've been working with for many, many years.
Those feelings are important for travelers, says this expert.
What we're seeing at this point is that Canadians want to go to places where they feel like they're welcome and they're going to be safe.
Oh, safe. I want to go somewhere safe. I don't feel safe going down to America. Where am I going to go? How about the Balkans? How about Mexico? How about Curacao? How about these other places where I would be more safe than America? Yeah, sounds like Canadians are making the right decision. Speaking of Canadians making the right decisions, we have a press briefing by Winnipeg Police about 2 corrupt officers who sold illicit substances, extorted people, and took grotesque pictures with an unalived woman in her underwear. And here's what they thought was priority before getting to the messaging.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Pat Sadak, and I'm a constable with the Winnipeg Police Service Public Information Office. We have one item to discuss with you today.
One item, nothing.
Before we do that, I would like to...
Nothing pressing. Just before we get into the item of the corrupt police officers who were selling illicit substances, all those things we just listened, we got important stuff to deal with.
Acknowledge that we are on Treaty 1 territory, the home and tradition lands of the Anishinaabe, Ojibwe, Innu, Cree, and Dakota peoples, and in the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. I'd like to now invite Chief Bowers to the podium to provide opening remarks.
There you have it, folks. While Donald Trump is making massive trade deals with multiple countries around the world, bringing in hundreds of millions, billions of announced foreign investment into the country, Mark Carney is floundering in the corner, unable to figure out anything other than spending taxpayer dollars. Canadian jobs are falling, but don't worry, we've recognized where the drinking water comes from. If you made it this far in the video, you absolutely rock. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We are trying to get these videos out there and grow the channel. If you want to support the channel, you can do that through the link down below. You can do it through YouTube as well. Whatever one, anything helps, and I do appreciate it. So thank you, and have a great rest of your day.